Good to see you again. Let's review what we've learned about present value and inflation. In addition to post-judgment and pre-judgment interest, present value and inflation adjustments are necessary because of the time value money has, and because over time the value of money itself changes. Let's talk first about present value. The plaintiff will sometimes be able to prove that the defendant's tort or breach of contract will injure the plaintiff in the future, and a damages judgment may therefore include an award for future losses. As a general rule, damages for future losses should be reduced to their present value by the use of an appropriate discount rate, sometimes a statutorily defined rate, in order to avoid unjustly enriching the plaintiff at the defendant's expense. A simple example will adequately make the point. Suppose, for example, the plaintiff proved that as a result of the defendant's tort, it would suffer a $10,000 loss 10 years from the date of the judgment. If the plaintiff were actually to be awarded the full $10,000 on the date of the judgment, that money could be safely invested, and at the end of 10 years, when the $10,000 loss is supposed to occur, the plaintiff would have both the $10,000 as well as the earnings on the investment. To avoid this result, the $10,000 loss should be reduced to an amount of money which, if safely invested today, would produce enough of a return so that in 10 years the plaintiff would have $10,000. In short, a future loss should be reduced to its net present value, or rather just to its present value. The present value rule and the way of calculating the present value was pretty well settled until the early 1980s, when plaintiffs and courts began to focus their attention upon the effects of inflation upon the value of money. This attention was the result of a period of very high double-digit inflation in the United States. Essentially, the effects of inflation on damage awards could no longer be ignored. In addition to a dollar having an investment value over time, the value of the dollar itself was going down over time, making present value calculations more complex. Going back to our example, when the plaintiff proved that it would suffer a $10,000 loss in 10 years, maybe we should ask whether that loss was measured in dollars 10 years from now or in today's dollars. If the $10,000 is measured in today's dollars, reducing that number to a present value may undercompensate the plaintiff, because inflation would have the effect of making $10,000 worth less in 10 years than it is worth today. Now, there is at present no generally accepted approach to making an inflation adjustment. I think a big part of the problem is that it seems to be pretty speculative to try to predict what inflation is going to do over the next 5, 10, 20 years. As a result, some courts simply adhere to the traditional rule which ignores the effects of inflation. You do present value because that's a little more certain, but you don't do inflation. Other courts permit experts to testify regarding future inflation, although this would appear to be pretty speculative, since anyone who could accurately forecast inflation over a period of years should be doing something more lucrative than testifying as a so-called expert witness. A number of courts have approved a real interest rate approach, in which it is assumed that the market interest rate at any one time includes a real interest rate plus the market's best estimate regarding future inflation. The real interest rate is estimated by economists to be in the range of 1 to 2%, and courts adopting this approach will reduce damages for a future loss to present value using this real discount rate without making any further adjustment for inflation. Finally, some courts, apparently tired of the whole exercise, simply assume that inflation and present value calculations will cancel each other out entirely, thereby relieving the court of the obligation to do either a present value or an inflation adjustment. This last approach is an understandable reaction to the complexities and uncertainties involved in estimating inflation. As Judge Newman noted for the Second Circuit in a case adopting the real interest rate approach. Quote, the average accident trial should not be converted into a graduate seminar on economic forecasting, close quote. Thus, if a court can adopt a relatively mechanical rule to avoid the expense of litigating the issue, well, that may be the best result for all concerned. It seems to me that either treating present value and inflation as a wash or setting a constant real rate at around 1 to 2%, those are the best solutions. I think it's to be hoped that in the next decade or so this issue can be settled so we stop litigating it as a fact question. Well, thanks for watching. Our next topic is benefits received and the collateral source rule. See you soon.